hurricane coverage on my radar.
All right, you guys, let me know if you can hear me. I see levels. I apologize. We have had ongoing problems with audio here tonight. We've been trying a bunch of different things. So if you can give me a yes, you can hear me. I hear audio currently. Oh, I hear myself. So that's always a good thing. So it has been a long, long weekend. I know it's been a long weekend for a lot of people. So let me kill this. I think you guys can hear me. So it is 9:39. I am the chief meteorologist at my radar. My name is Leslie Hudson, and want to try and get you updated on all things Dorian, of course, and hopefully unpack some of this and figure out what's going to be happening for the state of Florida the next couple of days. So much change today, and there is so much more at stake for the state of Florida than was 24 hours ago. We talked about this timing of this turn and what it could mean. It could imply to the state of Florida if there was not a turn when anticipated. I want to make it very clear off the top here that the turn is not expected to happen until tomorrow. So don't be alarmed that you still see this catastrophic hurricane, one of the strongest ever to form in the Atlantic basin since we've been keeping record, to head towards Florida. I know it looks ominous. I know it looks scary. I know we're seeing the pictures on social media, which are, frankly terrifying to see some of the video that's coming out of Abaco, people crying for help on their roofs. It's heartbreaking to see this kind of destruction, unleash itself on the northwestern Bahamas. So those folks are going to need a lot of help in the coming days and weeks and years with this hurricane, this historic hurricane. So this particular update, I'm going to get you updated on the watches and the warnings, and I'm just keep checking my audio. So let me know, you guys, if something happens. I'm going to keep checking down on my chat here to make sure there's nothing going on here. So anyway, so there's a lot of new updates. Tropical storm watches up for those counties you see in Central and South Florida. Hurricane warnings as well. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can get a better fix, and I'll kind of scoot up the coast, up the state. So the tropical storm watches are up for parts of Broward County, Palm Beach County. I'm just going to kind of drag this up. Inland over by Lake Okeechobee. The hurricane warning starts for Indian River County, up into St. Lucie County, Brevard County, and as all you can see all along here, the counties that are shaded in brown are the tropical storm watches, and then we have a hurricane watch up for parts of Volusia County and parts of Flagler County as well. It's about just right at the Flagler Beach area. So a big chunk of real estate, a lot of people in the state of Florida now under these watches and warnings, and we could see additional watches and warnings added tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on what Dorian does. And again, that much anticipated turn, not expected until tomorrow. So don't be alarmed if you, again, wake up tomorrow and see this beast of a machine so close to the state of Florida, because it is forecast to stay close to Florida and head on this path. And it looks like it's taking a little bobble towards the southwest there. If you look at let me get my pointer. If you watch the eye wall here, which again came right over Marsh Harbor and Turtle Bay, you can kind of see the kind of a bobble. That's not unusual in a hurricane, but actually in my distant locator might show this a little better. So let me start here and see if I follow that line, see how it's taken. This is like due west to West Palm Beach area. And you can see how the eye wall here, let me grab my little pointer again. See how it kind of nudges down a little bit towards the south. That's probably just a brief little bobble in the eye itself. In the forward motion, again, it's expected to continue generally towards the west through the next 24 to 36 hours. So we could see this turn happen fairly late and get, again, super close to the state of Florida. And that's, of course, why the situation got so much more intense for the state of Florida earlier today. All right, let me show you some video. Make sure that I've got this set up right. And this was in Vero Beach. Aaron Jack, our storm chaser, is down in Vero Beach. Again, they of course are expecting potentially some tropical storm force winds, maybe even higher. Things are looking Nice there at the beach. There's already red flag warnings up in that area, of course, and the seas are continuing to increase as we head in time. It's going to be a real mess there, of course. I've also got some video in New Smyrna Beach. That's in northern central Florida in Volusia County. Waves there on the increase as well as we continue to take a look at the surf that will not only potentially bring in a storm surge of 4 to 7 feet in that area, but also inundation of 2 to 5 feet. And I've got all that video that I'm going to show you here graphically in just a second. Last video clip I wanted to show you that I recorded this earlier today. So this is from the GOES 16. This is the visible imagery at the half kilometer, and it scans the scan every 15 minutes. And this shows a real clear depiction of the 3D analysis of this Category 5 hurricane, and you can see the banding features, those reds. Oh, hang on, you guys. I don't even have it. Oh, yeah, I've got it correct. I'm sorry. So the reds that you see there, again, some extraordinarily dangerous, powerful winds. And then on that northeast flank there of the hurricane, those are the Category 5 winds that are in the neighborhood of 185 miles an hour. It's hard for me to even get that out. I can't even believe that strong of a hurricane went over the Bahamas. It's never happened before, you guys. And of course, super concerned in the coming days here. However, I do want to try and reassure you all that there has been some indications that Dorian is starting to interact with some of the analysis and some of the thinking from the National Hurricane Center that the hurricane should indeed start to make that turn relatively soon in the next day or so. As I mentioned, it has slowed its forward motion, which was forecast. The Hurricane Center, very confident. The guidance model also very confident in the fact that it's slowing down. It's lost basically, or it's losing its steering current. So that ridge of high pressure that we've been talking about, that Bermuda high, I'll show you in a second, has retrograded a bit and moved away, which has kind of eroded the current steering pattern. And what's going to move in is a trough of low pressure from the lower 48, and that is forecast to help make that all-important turn towards the north. So another look vantage point of the radar, and of course some of the outer feeder bands, so just some squalls are going to be rotating on the west side of Dorian, and some of that's has been moving inland, the larger circulation, creating some coastal showers as well. But of course, conditions expected to deteriorate across the state of Florida starting tomorrow and especially on Tuesday. So from this vantage point, the ground-based radar showing some of those intense and really deep thunderstorms. Let me grab my pointer again. You can see some of the really deep convection right in here, and then complete closed and well-defined eye here. We looked at earlier today, it looked like there was an eye wall replacement that is on top in hurricanes, Category 4, Category 5s, where you'll see these eye wall replacements and that stadium effect that I was talking about yesterday. You may have seen the pictures on social media. We've got it on our pages, where that stadium effect, where it looks literally that you're sitting in a stadium because the clouds fan out like this well-oiled machine has this V shape basically at the top end of the eye wall there. Very rare and only happens in hurricanes of this caliber. All right, recon data. So this was the flight that was earlier this afternoon. I show this to you because look at that, 203 mile per hour wind as they came in through punch that eye core, the core of the eye there. Luckily, unfortunately, that particular pass was a wind, a 203 mile per hour wind for only 10 seconds. It has to be sustained at 30 seconds for it to be a valid return in terms of an uptick in the wind field. But boy, it was really scary to see that, you guys. 910, the millibars, incredibly low. This is the type of wind and barometric pressure that you would see in super typhoons in the Pacific. That's just how rare and unusual this is. So as of 9 p.m., so about 48 minutes ago, let's see, 26.6 north, 77.7 west. The wind's 185 miles an hour. Again, west movement at 5, pressure 915. So the thinking is from the National Hurricane Center is we'll see some fluctuations and should start to see a little bit of weakening. Hopefully tomorrow, some of the upwelling, when you've got these major hurricanes like this that are just sucking in all that moisture, all that water content from the Atlantic Ocean and sucking it up into its core, it pulls colder Atlantic Ocean temperatures and brings it up to the surface. So that helps to what's called upwelling, and it can help weaken storms temporarily. So we think that's going to be a player tomorrow, hopefully so, because we'll take anything we can get with this one, right? And then it's going to be more directly interacting with the state of Florida, and that friction in the lower levels of that core of that hurricane, it's like a friction. It's like taking a cotton ball and rubbing it over a piece of sandpaper. The friction with land versus the hurricane should help disrupt a little bit of the outer periphery of the core, and that will help weaken the system. But again, expected to stay a major hurricane for multiple days here, and a very dangerous and powerful one at that. So there's a look at the path. We'll get a new one from the National Hurricane Center here in about an hour from now, and we'll have another update before we sign off for the night. But again, I wanted to talk about the storm surge. So all these warnings, including the hurricane warnings and the hurricane watches, we have this storm surge of 4 to 7 feet that's possible from Lantana, Florida, up into Titusville, Florida. And that would be, again, as the hurricane came into and braked up the coast of Florida. That's the surge of water. You may have seen on social media today that storm surge, that classic storm surge in Abaco, where it was just a wall of water as far as the eye could see. If you haven't seen it, you really should go check it out on social media. It's heartbreaking to see the storm surge, and very similar, I might add, to what we saw with Hurricane Michael. And the best way I can describe a surge is when the Atlantic Ocean and land become one, where this wall of water literally comes in and just overtakes land, where in the immediate coast of where a hurricane is moving in. So here in Florida, not catastrophic storm surge like that, not a 20-foot storm surge, which is the estimates. We'll get a lot more analysis from the Hurricane Center and the people on the ground there that survived this hurricane in terms of what the surge was. But 4 to 7 feet is definitely a big deal and could be very dangerous, life-threatening storm surge of that nature in that area of Florida. Okay, besides that, there's also the inundation. So that went a little bit too quickly, but generally you can see that. I'm going to drag this so you guys can see it. So let me zoom in here close, so everybody can see. So the inundation, so that's basically flooding that comes with a landfalling hurricane. So I'm down in South Florida and Port Salerno. You can look at the legend there, yellow and orange, so greater than 3 feet above the ground of fresh water. And then in the orange, that's up to 6 feet. Generally, as some of the larger rivers will also have inundation. Most cases that would be 1 to 3 feet, but that can cause flooding, big problems along some of these rivers. The St. John I'm worried about that one. That one is notorious for being a problem when there's a hurricane coming. Up into Fort Pierce now, again, the 3-foot range, 1 to 3 for the most part here. And then we can see an uptick near Vero, about 6 feet of inundation possible. And then as we get further closer to where we think that the hurricane will be to its closest center, I'm going to kind of speed this up, is up in Brevard County, where we're starting to look at a much larger inundation here. Again, 3 to 6 feet in some areas, depending on exactly where it comes in. You can see some of that right over there. That's Titusville Kennedy Space Center. They're above ground. They have an infrastructure in place there that I'm not worried about so much about NASA, but I am worried about the folks in Titusville, because it is this would be 6 to 9 feet of water that would come in with the hurricane. And then up the road, I'm going to pull this out really quickly, because already we're talking about an inundation up here. Let me pull it way out. Jacksonville, up to 3 to 6 feet, and the red as we get into Georgia, up to 9 feet. So I mentioned this. Actually, I don't think I mentioned it today on YouTube, but I have mentioned on some of my other lives that I'm more worried, at least in terms of the surge and the inundation for the, for the states north, because I think the inundation is going to be higher. Look at that. When I pull this out, you see an inundation 6 to 9 feet in parts of Georgia, and then up into South Carolina and North Carolina. So, So we'll watch that. Let me grab a sip of water here. We'll watch that in these coming days and see how that verifies. But the immediate, of course, threat is for the state of Florida. So hurricane warnings, of course, for the northwestern Bahamas. Those will stay up through tomorrow, more than likely. Hurricane watch up from Volusia County, basically down into, let me zoom in here too, basically down into the county line of Palm Beach and Broward counties. And then we've also got the tropical storm watches, Lake Okeechobee under a tropical storm watch, and a tropical storm warning is for the areas shaded in that purple color that you see there. So all of this, of course, or some of this we had yesterday, but there's so many new warnings that came in today at 5 o'clock. Because again, Dorian's so powerful now and has grown in size somewhat. Still, that core wind field, the catastrophic wind field, is still isolated to about 15 miles across. So if there's any silver lining, which it's hard to find it with this hurricane, is that that there is that core wind field has not expanded, and I wouldn't anticipate that to expand. It's the tropical storm force winds. Hurricane force winds, by the way, extend out about 45 miles. I'll go back to the radar and I'll show it to you. And tropical storm force winds go out about 150, I believe. I have to double check. But anyway, the other risk that we also have on top of all this other stuff is this dangerous high surf. The surf 7 to 10 feet, rip current risk increasing, dangerous boating through the week across the southeast, including Florida. That is not expected to change most of this week. I know surfers love this stuff, but it's really, really dangerous in the state of Florida here in the next couple of days. Okay, steering currents. We've been talking a lot about that. So I added some arrows and some icons to hopefully make this a little easier to explain. So some of the things that we've been looking for in terms of what is going to help get this hurricane pulling north is this trough right here. And think of it as a big bulldozer in the atmosphere that's going to start pushing south and east, right? In the directions of the arrow that I have. And then we have our big Bermuda high, which has also been a big player in the forecast of Dorian. So Dorian rides in the channel between this high pressure ridge here. There's also another upper level high here, not so much of a direct player, but as this trough pushes south, it starts to pull Dorian north, and that's when that turn happens. And then once the trough gets close enough to the Atlantic seaboard, the increase in that north pull and then a northeasterly pull becomes more likely. Now you have to remember, hurricanes do not like differing pressure centers from their own. So basically, think of it as like a dog that's running away, a big dog that's running away from or a small dog running away from a big dog. The actual hurricane itself pulls away when it sees a differing pressure gradient ahead of it. So it knows, not like a person, but the hurricane senses, or however you want to quantify it, that this trough is coming and there's a difference in pressure, and so it's going to pull that system northward. And all the guidance is there, you guys. Everything is in agreement. I'm glad that I see this trough on water vapor. We saw it yesterday, but the fact that I see it so well defined now, I'm confident that we are going to see a turn. What we don't know is when that turn happens, of course, and that's what's the scary stuff in these next 24 hours. So the wind radii, this product good for 72 hours, and you can see the yellow there. Those are tropical storm force winds. I think this product is actually not. It probably needs to be upgraded. I don't from the Hurricane Center, but you can see here that these tropical storm force winds easily coming in across Florida, as well as these are sustained tropical storm force winds. These are up to 34 knots in the yellow, and then the sustained dangerous winds are right here, which would stay just offshore on the current path. But because, again, this is going to be so close, that's why warnings have been issued and watches have been issued, and storm surge and inundation all have been issued because of the mere nature that this is going to be so close. And one little bobble here of 20 miles or so would be a significant change to the state of Florida. So that's why there's so much difference going on. All right, so here's a look at the probability of tropical storm force winds extending through the state of Florida, and we'll start to see that tomorrow night really ramp up, and especially Tuesday is going to be the pivotal day when most of the state of Florida will be having some piece of Dorian, whether it's sustained tropical storm force winds, sustained hurricane force winds, or tropical storm gusts. That particular fine-tuning will come into the forecast once we get a little bit closer to Tuesday. But the good guidance is that we're anticipating, for sure, tropical storm force winds in the interior part of the state and a sector of eastern central Florida, including Indian River and Brevard County, that will have sustained hurricane force winds. They will not be the 185 mile per hour winds on the current path that it's on today. But there will be potentially Category 2 or Category 3 winds depending on how close Dorian gets. Again, that's another nuance that will be fine-tuned in the forecast once the turn happens. Once we see the turn to the north, we'll be able to fine-tune this a lot more and really be able to clearly tell you what kind of winds that those areas can expect. The threat for the flooding has decreased, so that's good news. We were concerned, of course, that there was going to be major problems with flooding across Florida. I still think there is going to be some flooding issues, but if the core wind field stays off the state, then the threat shifts towards the Carolinas, where it would get more of a direct impact, more pieces of this very powerful hurricane. But again, all of that's kind of contingent on Dorian and what Dorian does. Look at the computer modeling. This is the latest run, so very clustered over, of course, Grand Bahama. And then we kind of see a split. You can see some of the models taking Dorian over the state of Florida, some of the models staying off the state of Florida. The National Hurricane Center is kind of riding in between this cluster of analysis in this particular one. We'll see what they do at 11, of course, in their latest, their 11 p.m. update. Okay, so the key messaging. Now, this is from the National Hurricane Center. This is their words and not mine. So that's, again, the seriousness of this situation. Life-threatening storm surge is possible along parts of Florida's east coast, and that's that area I was talking about that has that 4 to 7 foot risk for the storm surge. That's Brevard County, parts of Indian River County, and maybe even a little bit of St. Lucie. We'll see. A slight deviation in the path could bring Dorian over the state of Florida, so it's definitely going to be wait and see over this next day or so. Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina need to stay up to date, have their plan continuing in play, because as you see here, the modeling shows right up the coast, raking right up the coast of Florida and then following the coastline of the southeastern U.S. before eventually, hopefully, turning out to sea, and hopefully no one will get a direct landfall from Dorian but in the United States, but we can't say that yet. Tropical watches and warnings are up for parts of Florida, which we've also discussed. So I put the Fujita scale in here, you guys, because I wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit. The damage estimates that are going to come in from the northwestern Bahamas are going to look very similar to what an EF4 tornado would be. The 166 mile per hour winds to up to 200. We already know that the northwestern Bahamas had gusts over 200 miles an hour. And so the devastation that we've seen already, the preliminary devastation, is very similar to what an EF4 tornado is. I mentioned that not to scare people, not to invoke fear, but to help you understand the magnitude and the power of these very rare Category 5 hurricanes that are basically, when they're that size, that eye is basically a tornado wrapped around a hurricane, for lack of a better description. It's extraordinarily dangerous, extraordinarily catastrophic for the areas that get impacted by it. So unfortunately, I think the damage video that we're going to see out of Abaco and Grand Bahama in the coming days is going to be heartbreaking, to say the least, and very similar to what we saw with Michael, where it was just completely flattened in some spots. I'm anticipating that there is no other type of damage that you can see from a Category 5 hurricane. I've covered several of them in my career, and the damage is absolutely like nothing else you've never seen. It looks exactly like a tornado has gone through there. That's what Michael looked like. That's what Andrew looked like. Was through both of those. And unfortunately, that's what I think the damage is going to look like in the Bahamas. So let me talk a little bit more about those tropical or hurricane force winds, and then we'll take this feed down because I want to get ready for the 11 p.m. info that's coming in here shortly. But I've got to start my computer, so let me zoom in here. And if you guys had any questions, I'll go back and look at them here in 1 second. Let me do this, and then I can grab the distance locator. Okay, let me do that. So this is going to be a crude estimate here, you guys. But the actual eye itself is, again, about 15, and I didn't grab it right, but it's about 15 miles across. Let me erase that because it's not. It's about 15 miles across. And then the hurricane force winds, and generally these hurricane force winds are in the northeastern quadrant that are the highest, and those extend out about 45 miles. Let me get it to 45 from the center. And then tropical storm force winds extend out about 90 to 100 miles, right about there. So currently, of course, the state of Florida not getting those hurricane force gusts, but I do anticipate to see some of that. Or I'm sorry, those tropical storm gusts, but I do anticipate to see that, of course, tomorrow and much more so on Tuesday when it makes its closest approach to the state of Florida. So I'll show that again tomorrow, and I think Mike's been showing it too. I hope that helps kind of give you a depiction, and we'll see. Okay, I gotta grab my glasses because I'm tired, my eyes hurt. So let me look at this real quick and see if there's anything that I can answer in the chat. I don't see anything. People are asking about schools. I know schools here in Florida, many of them are closed. Okay. No, I don't see anything right off the top, and I want to make sure that I'm ready for the 11 p.m. stuff. So anyway, you guys, that'll do it for now. I'll be back in another hour, probably 90 minutes or so, with the update of the new path, and we'll try to unpack a little bit more of this and try and keep people as calm as possible, be ready for what Dorian will be bringing to the state of Florida starting tomorrow and especially Tuesday. And hopefully we'll start to see that turn tomorrow, which everybody wants to see. I don't think anyone anywhere doesn't want to see that turn happen. So before I leave, let me show you our social media pages so you can follow us here. You can follow us on Facebook at My Radar, Twitter at MyRadarWX, same thing for Instagram. And of course, if you're here on YouTube, we so appreciate you guys. And we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. And that'll do it for now, you guys. I'll see you back here in about 90 minutes or so. Thanks so much for hanging with us and being patient with the